Two monks were walking down a mountain road when they reached a river, swollen from days of rain. The current was fast, dangerous. On the bank stood a young woman, unable to cross. Both monks had taken a vow: no contact with women, not a touch, nothing. It was one of the oldest rules of their order. But the older monk didn't hesitate. He lifted the woman into his arms, carried her through the current, set her down safely on the other side, and kept walking, as if nothing had happened. The younger monk followed in silence, but something in him had locked shut. An hour passed, then two, but he couldn't let it go. Finally, he spoke. "Master, we took a vow. How could you carry her like that?" The older monk turned to him, almost puzzled. "I put the woman down on the riverbank hours ago. Why are you still carrying her?" The master carried the woman for a few minutes. The disciple carried the event for hours. The disciple had entered rumination. Rumination is what happens when the mind tries to emotionally resolve something by replaying it endlessly. It feels productive, even necessary, like you're finally getting somewhere with it. Most of the time, you're not working through anything, you're just repeating it. And that distinction matters more than it sounds like it should. Reflection helps you understand something and then move. Rumination just loops the same scene, the same dialogue, the same ending that never changes no matter how many times you run it. You already know this pattern, the argument that ended 20 minutes ago and is still playing in your head 3 days later. The comeback you never said, rehearsed for a week straight, addressed to someone who has already forgotten the conversation happened. There is nothing left to do, and yet something in you keeps working the same dead file. Psychological suffering has a very specific origin point. It comes from a thought attached to the event. This shouldn't have happened. I should have been different. He should have acted differently. That thought, in any of its forms, is resisting what happened, and resistance, stretched out over time, is rumination. The trouble is that rumination is a known risk factor for anxiety and depression, because the inner voice driving it tends to be negative. Once it's a survival mechanism built to scan for threats. The problem is that it reacts to remembered and imagined threats almost the same way it reacts to real ones. It runs the same loop for both, and the cost isn't only peace of mind. Rumination occupies working memory, the same mental space you'd use to focus, to create, to actually be where you are. Every minute spent replaying is a minute your attention wasn't available for anything else. In neuroscience terms, this is a feedback loop. Each replay reinforces the same neural pathway, making the negative response a little more automatic each time. Over time, that can raise baseline stress, which also increases the risk of anxiety and depression. It isn't just an unpleasant habit, it's a groove being carved, one repetition at a time. Here's the deeper pattern underneath all of it. Suffering isn't caused by what happened. It's caused by resisting what happened, or, if there's nothing left to do about it, by resisting what already is. Where there's nothing left to change, acceptance isn't resignation. It's the exit door. Honoring the moment as it is, not as it should have been, is the only way rumination loses its fuel. The present moment is never actually unbearable. What's unbearable is the story layered on top of it, the narrative you keep telling about what happened, or what it meant, or what it says about you. The disciple wasn't suffering because of the woman, he was suffering because of the story he kept telling himself about the woman. So here's the real question, not why do you ruminate, but why this moment, and not the 100 other moments that happened this week and simply dissolved on their own. Because some things find identification in you and most don't. An event sticks when it finds something to grab onto in you. A criticism sticks when it touches an identity. A comment sticks when it confirms a fear you already carry. A rejection sticks when it lands exactly on a wound that was already open. The disciple wasn't attached to the woman. He was attached to being a monk who follows the rules. His entire sense of self was built on meeting the literal requirements of the role. He was more concerned with being seen as a monk than with actually living as one. The master carried no such attachment. He didn't perform the requirements. He lived the essence underneath them, and because there was no identity riding on the moment had nowhere to stick. It happened, and it ended. This is the actual mechanism. Rumination isn't triggered by the size of an event, it's triggered by how much of you the event happens to touch. So the practice isn't complicated, even if it's not easy. Notice when you've been sitting in the same thought too long, and when you catch it, don't fight it, don't argue with it, but redirect. Think of something good, or come back to what's actually in front of you. Your attention is the most valuable thing you own. It's worth protecting the same way you'd protect anything valuable, deliberately, on purpose, every day. There's even a kind of rumination worth cultivating, circling back on purpose to what's good, reinforcing that pathway instead of the other one. Reality, when you're actually in it, is unpredictable and far richer than anything your thoughts can replay. The master carried her a long time ago. How much longer are you going to keep carrying her?
If this reflection resonated with you, like and subscribe to The Arise. New reflections await.